Thank you so much for coming this afternoon, letting me share a little bit about our organization. And I wanted to talk to you today about understanding students' behavior through the lens of temperament traits. So my name is Brenda McCormack, and I'm from the Roots of Empathy organization. How many people here have heard of Roots of Empathy? Okay, I have a lot to tell you about then. That's very good news. Thank you. I just want to give you a little bit of background about how the Roots of Empathy organization started. The organization started back in 1996, and this is a picture of Mary Gordon, our founder and president of the organization. So Mary was born and raised in Newfoundland. We're from Canada. Newfoundland is the far eastern province of Canada. And she came to Toronto back in the early 80s as a kindergarten teacher. And she, as many of you do, the first day of school, she said these little people came into the classroom, and some of them had success stamped right across their forehead. And then she told me about the walking wounded. She said, how does that happen to little children? These are 4-year-olds. If I want to make a difference in their lives, I'm going to have to start earlier. And what Mary did is she started the first parent and family literacy centers that started in Toronto, Canada, and are now a model across all of Canada, some in the US and internationally. So Mary was working in these parent and family literacy centers, and in these family literacy centers, parents would come in with their little preschoolers. And it was a drop-in center, but the parents stayed with the children. And it helped the children get ready for school. It also helped the parents get ready for school, because many parents need to get ready to be able to support their children through their education. So Mary started these centers, and she started them in the most disadvantaged areas of the city. And what she saw in those centers was a lot of aggression and violence, a lot of domestic violence. And she thought, where does that come from? Where does all the cruelty in the world come from? All the violence that we see? It comes from a lack of empathy. Where does empathy come from? Empathy is innate. We're all born with the ability to develop empathy. But it either flourishes or it fades in that early attachment relationship that we have with those people that love us. The relationship that we had with our parents is a template for every other relationship that we have in our lives. So Mary reasoned, what if I brought that relationship into the classroom, like a field trip, around a beautiful green blanket? I'd bring that parent and that baby into the classroom. The children would stand around that green blanket and welcome that baby in. And we do that in our Roots of Empathy program. When the baby comes into the classroom, the children stand around the green blanket and we sing, hello, baby Maya, and how are you? And we coach the parents to stop for 3 seconds in front of each one of those children. And when those children look into the baby's eyes and the baby looks back at them, there's a surge of oxytocin in those children's brains. And it puts them in a beautiful place for learning. And they gather around that green blanket and they talk about that baby. And we coach our instructors. Our instructors are not classroom teachers. They're guests into the classroom. They give the teacher an opportunity to sit back and watch their children learn. They learn more about their children because we're asking the children what they think and how they feel. And our instructors are coached just to ask experiential questions. Oh, look at baby Maya. What's baby Maya doing? How is she feeling? How can you tell she's feeling that way? Let's look at her face. Let's look at her body. It's the beautiful thing about babies. In that 40 minutes that they're on that green blanket, you're going to see everything from pure joy to being really quite pissed off. And that gives the instructor an opportunity. And the children in the classroom are developing emotional literacy, which is the ability to be able to identify our feelings and then be able to manage them. So that's our Roots of Empathy program. I just want to talk about one of the concepts in our program, which is temperament. So temperament is a concept that we use in our program that helps children understand that we are all different. So temperament is innate. We're all born with our own unique temperament traits. It's like the basket that we come in. I'm going to read you a little bit out of Mary Gordon's book here. which is a little bit tricky when you're holding a microphone, but I'm going to give it a good try. Here we go. In Roots of Empathy, we teach children that babies are all born with different temperaments, and that a baby you get is rarely the baby you ordered. Any parent with more than one child can tell you that these differences in temperament are innate. Your first child, a boy, is born in the spring. You name him David. You take a year off work. You breastfeed him, play with him, read to him, sing to him, and take him to the park. David feeds contentedly, sits happily on your lap, sits equally happily on the lap of your friends when they come to visit, goes to sleep easily, and wakes up smiling. 3 years later, your second child is born, a boy, and you name him Max. You take a year off work. You breastfeed him, play with him, read to him, sing to him, and take him to the park. There's where the resemblance ends. Max fusses at your breast, turns his head at every sound. On your lap, he wiggles and arches his back. He howls when you try to hand him over to your friend, screams when you put him in his crib, and starts crying as soon as he wakes up. How on earth did this happen? You didn't move house. David and Max were born into an almost identical environment, except, of course, that David was born into a family of 2 and Max into a family of 3. You were thrilled at their arrival in the world and were ready to provide the same loving parenting approach. The answer to this is both easy and difficult. David was born with a set of temperament traits that, among other 3 things, predisposed him to adapt easily, to react well to change, and quietly enjoy his environment. Max arrived with a set of temperament traits that, among other things, made him more distractible, less welcoming of change, and slower to develop regular patterns. What makes this an easy answer is that there is a solid genetic reason for the differences in the 2 boys. They were born that way, with a distinct set of temperament traits that exist regardless of the environment. What makes it a difficult answer is that the parenting approach that works so well with David will need to be adjusted to accommodate Max's temperament. So the Roots of Empathy program has adopted the concept of temperament, and temperament was a part of a research study that was done by Stella Chess and Alexander Thomas back in the 1950s. So they did a longitudinal study of people and determined that we are all born with a set of temperament traits, and that there are 9 temperament traits. There's 9 temperament traits, and we all sit on a continuum on each one of these temperament traits. We all have an activity level, we all have a level of intensity, we all have some level of sensitivity. Our first reactions are all different. Some of us are high in adaptability and some of us are lower in adaptability. We are all different in our mood, in our persistence and distractibility, and in our first reaction to things. So we've adopted this, and the way that we bring it into our program is through this tiny baby. And I just want to show you a short video clip, just a 2-minute clip, of what we do in our program to help children understand this baby's unique temperament, and that helps bring it back to them and their own unique temperament. So we want children to be able to understand their own individual uniqueness. And it helps them then to be able to respond appropriately and to bridge the understanding of one another's differences. As educators and as parents, you will be able to support children in different situations if you understand temperament. And you'll also be able to help the child regulate their emotions and behavior if you can help understand where these reactions and behaviors are coming from. So let me show you this short video clip of a Roots of Empathy class.
Let's see what she can do. Do you want to play with this? What does that sound like? What's the sound?
Yesterday, I want this toy.
So she's saying she wants this toy, but the sound she's making. Let's put this out here. Let's see what happens. Okay, now do you think she'll be able to get this?
Yes.
Okay, let's watch her. Now what's she going to do?
Yes.
See if she keeps trying. What happened? Shall I pick you up? Do you need help? Okay, let's pick you up. Okay. Did she get upset when she tipped over?
No.
No, so is she easily frustrated?
No.
No, she's not. Let's try and put her back. Hannah, come here. Sure. Put her back a little bit closer again. Whoops. I think she's ready to do something else. Let's see if she tries again.
It's dancing.
Want to try again? What do you think? Do you think she wants to try? What do you think?
He wants to try again.
Do you think she wants to try again? See, look at her body's reaching. Let's try and see what happens.
I want to see her do this.
Does anybody remember when she was learning to roll over? What? She kept trying. Oh. Does that get hurt? You okay? Should we try? Make a little closer?
Yeah.
So that's just a couple minutes of a Roots of Empathy class, and you can see how engaged the students were. They weren't actors. That was a real Roots of Empathy class. And in that 2 minutes, that instructor asked 18 questions of the students. So she wasn't giving them any information. She was asking them about what they were experiencing. So that is pure experiential learning, which we know is the deepest learning. But what she was expressing to them was about baby May's temperament. And really what she was focused on there was one of the traits, which is persistence, but we'll get to that one in a minute. When you all came in, you got a sheet of paper, and it lists the 9 temperament traits that we have there. And again, those 9 temperament traits came from the work of Stella Chess and Alexander Thomas. And they were family therapists in New York City. And what they were trying to do is explain to parents why with one child there might be a goodness of fit. Does anybody here have a goodness of fit with one of their children or one of their students? Your temperaments really complement one another. You really get them. And then sometimes it's like this. Anybody have one of these? And you can have 2 or 3 or 4 children, and some are like this and some are like this, just like Max and David. But helping parents and educators understand temperament and understand the difference in temperament helps us appreciate one another. It helps you to understand why. So let's go through each one of the temperament traits and talk about them. And I want you to think sometimes about yourself, and I want you to think about the people in your lives, maybe students in your classroom or your own children, or maybe your partner. So activity level. The temperament trait of activity level is the amount of motor activity or movement, as well as the balance of active and inactive periods. So we know that some of us are very active. You have students in your class that are very active. You can look under the desks and their little legs are moving the whole time. Those are the classrooms we go into, and we know that because they have the tennis balls on all the legs of the chairs, because everybody's got the wiggles and they've got to move. But temperament is on a continuum. Every temperament trait is on a continuum from one extreme to the other. With activity level, we say some people have high activity level, some people have low activity level, and then there's everybody in between. It's just more obvious when you're at one end or the other. So think back about when you were a student in school, and there was a school assembly, and there was a guest that came in, and everybody was expected to be on their best behavior and sit crisscross applesauce on the floor and not wiggle and move. How did you do with that? Think about your own activity level. Are you a high activity person or a low activity person or somewhere in between? Just think about that. Who here is a high activity person? We'll put our hands up here for high activity. Anybody a low activity person? Anybody somewhere in between? So it helps parents understand and educators understand if they've got a high activity child, that some children need to expend energy on a very consistent basis. So it's really hard. I'm from Canada, and we're getting into our colder season, and sometimes it's quite cold, and children can't get out for recess. They can't get outdoors. And those are not nice days for their teachers, because they need to get out and run. They need to get out and do things. On the other end of the continuum are children that have a low activity level. They'd rather sit quietly. Now, the thing that happens to children, those that are on the high activity level, are sometimes labeled as what is that one that they have, the hyperactivity? It's not, they just have a high activity level. And sometimes those children that are on the low end are considered lazy, and they're not lazy. They just prefer to sit and do quiet activities. And as parents and educators, you can help them find that balance and help them get out and do some healthy activity, but also appreciate the fact that a quiet activity more suits their temperament. The next temperament trait I'm going to talk about is an intensity. So we're all somewhere on that continuum between having a high intensity or a low intensity. And when we think about intensity, we talk to the children about their emotional reaction. And when this little baby comes into the classroom and is sitting on the green blanket, it doesn't take very long to figure out if that's a high intensity baby or a low intensity baby. Babies that cry very long and loud. Anybody have one of those in their lives? That's a high intensity baby. Other babies might just have a little whine or a little cry. It doesn't mean that they're less unhappy. It just means that they express their emotions differently. We also see babies that by the end of the program, they're getting up to be about a year old. And some of them we get that have that great belly laugh. I love being at a funny movie with someone that is high intensity. I spend more time enjoying their high intensity, their great belly laugh, than I do watching the movie. So think about yourself when you were a student and there was going to be a field trip to the zoo and it got canceled because it was pouring rain. How would you have expressed yourself? Would you have expressed yourself very openly and quite loud, showed your frustration, or were you someone that kept it more to yourself? What's your emotional reaction like? Anybody here think that they might have a high intensity level when showing their emotion? Anybody on the low end? How about in the middle? Anybody feeling like they might be in the middle? I'll go to the next one. Sensitivity. So when we think about sensitivity and temperament traits, we think about the 5 senses. Some of us are highly sensitive. How many people here have to cut the tag out of the back of their shirt before they can wear it? Or the seams in their pants drive them crazy? Some children are like that. They get a new shirt and they get sent off to school and it's got the label in the back, and all day they feel kind of itchy. And it's hard to learn when you're feeling itchy. It makes you feel anxious. So some children are very high in sensitivity. If we think about another sense, the sense of hearing, some people are more sensitive to sounds than other people. So think of some of those children that are in your classroom that are very highly sensitive to sound. And you have those big bells that go off throughout the day, or announcements that come over the PA system during the day. If you're very highly sensitive to sound, that might bother you quite a bit. And if you're bothered by sounds, you're going to have difficulty learning. The other sensitivity that we talk about with the children is emotional sensitivity. Some people are more emotionally sensitive than other people, that they find sad movies. They cry at sad movies. They are more brought to tears or to laughter easier than other people. So if you think about your own sensitivity, the way that you are, would you say that you're high in sensitivity or low in sensitivity or somewhere in the middle? I'm going to let you figure out all this on that sheet later on, so you don't have to offer if you're not comfortable right now. So we talk to the children about the baby sensitivity. We talk to the mom or dad that come into the classroom about how does the baby sleep, and does noises in the house wake the baby up? Because some people are woken up by noises and some people can sleep right through them. It helps the children then understand why they might be like that. So we always want the children to know it's not good or bad, it's just who you are. It's who you are in the world, and children come to appreciate themselves and one another more. First reaction is very interesting too. How many people here would say that they have adventurous children in their classroom? You've got some adventurous children? Those are the ones that get hurt emotionally and physically because they jump right in. So when we talk about first reaction, and that's your first reaction to a situation or a person or a thing, something that you're encountering. And some people are very adventurous in their first reaction. They want to jump right in and get something started. On the other end of the continuum, we have cautious people. How many people can think of cautious children or students in their classroom? Have you got some cautious children? They really like to think about it. They like to kind of test it out, maybe watch somebody else do it first. Think about yourself when you were a child and you went to a birthday party and there was a swimming pool there and everybody was diving off the diving board. Would you have been one of those people that would have got up on that diving board and dived right in? Or would you have watched for a while and made a decision whether you were going to do it or not that day? How many people here would have jumped off the diving board? And how many people here would have maybe watched for a while? Do you think you would have got off that diving board, or do you think you would have waited for another day? So children in your classroom, some of them are adventurous. Those are our risk takers. Those are the ones that want to jump right in. The cautious children like to sit back. They like to watch. So my daughter is a very cautious person, but she does all kinds of fun things. So her friend, Ryan and Emily is my daughter, wanted to go skydiving. That's what they wanted to do. So Ryan says, okay, can we book it tomorrow? He knows nothing about skydiving, but he's just ready to go do it. He's a very adventurous guy. My daughter, so that was 18 months ago, she's almost ready. She's researched it. She's checked out the best companies. She's read all about it. She knows exactly where she's going to go. So she's cautious. It doesn't mean she's not going to do it. She will do it soon, but she has to make sure that everything's in line. When she was a little girl, when we went to birthday parties, I would go to drop her off, and she would cling to my leg. She'd be right behind my leg, and she'd be watching to see who was in the ball pit and what was happening over here and what are they having to eat. By the time she got into the birthday party, they were handing out the treat bags for everybody to go home. But as a parent, because I knew about temperament, she needed to stand back. She needed to watch. Being pushed into situations wouldn't have been good for her. So children that are cautious need a bit more time. Children that are adventurous need a bit more warning, a little bit more warning about what they're going to get themselves into. So that's first reaction. Adaptability. How many people here would say that they cope well with change? Anybody here cope well with change? So adaptability is the ease with which a person adjusts to a situation. My husband is very low in adaptability. So a couple of years ago, we were going out for dinner. And I'm from Canada, so we have, anybody here been to the Keg? It's a very Canadian steakhouse type place, and it's a big deal when you get to go there. It's kind of like a special occasion. And we're going to the Keg, and we get there, it's January, and they've got a sign on the door. We're closed this evening because they're having a staff party. You know, it's busy during Christmas and New Year's and everything, and they can't go have their staff party, so now they've planned one in January, and I'm thinking, isn't that nice? That's so nice, right? They get to have their party. And we passed Boston Pizza on the way in, so let's just turn the car around and go back. Well, my husband can't make that switch. Or he couldn't 2 years ago. He could not make that switch 2 years ago. We didn't have dinner that night. We went home mad. Because the Keg was closed, he had his mind that that's what he was going to have. He knew what he was going to have and order because that's what he does all the time. He's very low in adaptability. I'm high in adaptability. I've always got plan B in my back pocket. It's not good or bad, it's just we're two different people. Now the good news is that I very nicely explained this whole temperament thing to him, right? Because I'm not having dinner, so I might as well do something. And a couple months later, we were going out to a restaurant on a Saturday, and it was a Mexican restaurant. I love Mexican restaurants. And he said, let's stop by that restaurant I told you about. This is going to be great. And then he said, oh, wait a minute. If they're not open on a Saturday, what then will we do? And I thought, good, he's got it, right? His temperament didn't change, but he learned about himself. He learned that it's hard for him to handle disappointment. that he likes to know what he's going to do and when he's going to do it. And when that changes, he's really got to think it through. Where I think I might have already thought it through. I think I saw Boston Pizza and thought, oh, good. If for some reason they're not open, like a holiday party, we're going to Boston Pizza. But he needs to actually think that through. So temperament doesn't change. What happens is you become more accustomed to your own temperament once you know about it, and you're able to support yourself. Mood. This isn't good mood, bad mood. Often we think about mood that way. Mood is really how do you present yourself to the world. When we talk about mood with the children, we talk about sunny and serious. Those are the two ends of the continuum. Some babies that we have coming into Roots of Empathy classes come in that very first visit, and they're like a party on wheels. They cannot believe their good fortune. Look at all these kids here just to see me. This is going to be fantastic. You get the big smiles, the big eyes. You get lots of body movements. That might be a baby that's very sunny in their temperament. But then sometimes we get those serious ones. We call them our philosopher kings, and they just stare at everybody. What in the world is going on here? People who have more of a sunny temperament wake up ready for the world. There's other people who are more serious, or I like to call them sunset. I like to talk about sunset and sunrise. Some people are more sunset, and when they wake up in the morning, they need a few minutes to themselves. That would be my daughter. I kind of stay away for the first little bit. Then she's a delight. She'd tell you that. But she does need a little bit of time. Who here faces their day with, yeah, come and get me. I am ready for my day. Who here thinks that they might have a sunny mood? And who here thinks that they might have more of a serious mood? And who here might think that they're a little bit in the middle? I want to show you one of our Roots of Empathy babies. Would you think that this little guy has a more of a sunny mood or a serious mood? Serious. He came to the class 9 times throughout the school year. That's when the babies come in with their parents, 9 times throughout the school year. Do you think he would crack a smile? No, but that's who he is. He's not unhappy. Sometimes it's hard to parent or to have a child in your classroom with a very serious mood because you feel like you can't make them happy. You don't know, it's very hard to read the reaction. When kids smile, you think they're happy, and when they don't smile, you think there might be something up. But when you get a child that's kind of like this all the time, it's really hard to read their emotions. But it doesn't mean that he wasn't having a blast. He was at a party in that picture. We have a baby celebration at the end of every year, and the children love it. The babies love it. So he was probably having the time of his life, but you wouldn't know it from looking at him. Who here thinks that no, I think I already asked you that one. I'm sorry. There we go. Persistence. Persistence is an interesting temperament trait. So it's how we respond to situations that are frustrating. Some people are very high in persistence. They can just keep trying and trying and trying and trying until they achieve their goal. And other people give up because they get frustrated. I know that a lot of the time we talk about perseverance. And you get kind of points for being able to persevere. It's a great thing. It is a great thing. But some children are born very high in persistence. So they've already got it halfway mastered. And other children are born low in persistence. They find it hard to stay on a task if it makes them feel frustrated. So as educators and parents, it's best to try to break down those tasks for them so that they don't seem insurmountable. Think about when you were little and you were learning to ride a bike. I say ride a bike in Canada, I should say surf here, right? When you were trying to do something like that, a milestone thing, like riding a bike when you're a kid's a big deal, right? Everybody gets to do it. I want to be able to do it. And you kept trying and trying, and it was hard. When you were a child, do you think that you would have gotten frustrated easily with something like that? Or are you more on the high end of the continuum of persistence and you would have kept trying and trying? Where do you think you are? Who here thinks that they're high in persistence? And who here thinks that they're low in persistence? Anybody think that they might be in between? Okay. Distractibility. There's a good one. Who here thinks that they might be highly distractible? And who here knows that they have some children in their classroom that are very high in distractibility? So when a child is high in distractibility, they have a hard time blocking out all those things that are happening in their environment. When a child is low in distractibility, they can focus on a task for a long time. I'm very low in distractibility. My office is in the front of our house because I work from home. People come and go, things happen all day long. People even stick their head in and wave at me sometimes, and I haven't got a clue what's going on because I'm so glued to my screen, and whatever it is I'm doing, I'm very low in distractibility. But some people are very high in distractibility. Every noise would bother them. I don't think that my husband couldn't have his office in the front of the house. He'd be like the greeter at Walmart, you know, letting everybody come in and saying hello to them. But we're all different in that way. A baby that's very high in distractibility is easier to soothe. When you have a tiny baby and they're upset about something and they're easily distracted, well, then you can calm them down easily. So we're never saying that a temperament trait is good or bad, it's just who you are. Who here thinks that they're very high in distractibility? When you were younger, when you had to do your homework, did you have to do it in a really quiet place, or could you be right in the middle of the action with mom cooking in the kitchen and the TV on? Who here thinks that they're high in distractibility? Low in distractibility? Somewhere in between? And the last temperament trait, the 9th one, is rhythmicity. So rhythmicity is the predictability or unpredictability of biological functions. I'm very low in rhythmicity. So I flew from Canada last night, arrived here at 10 o'clock, which was I don't know what time in Canada. And then I get up at my regular time, just like my alarm clock doesn't even have to go off, even though I'm in a different time zone, in a very different place, and spent a long day yesterday. I can just wake up whenever everybody wakes up. I always say I eat when the people eat, and I sleep when the people sleep. My daughter is in London, England tonight. She's flying back home, and she'll be a mess for a month. Even when the time changes in the fall and the spring, she has a difficult time adjusting to that time difference. Things just don't work well for her. She has to eat her meals at the same time every day. How many people here are like that, where they have to sleep at the same time, they eat at the same time? They really like that predictability in their lives. Anybody here think that they might be high in rhythmicity? Anybody here think that they might be low in rhythmicity like I am? Anybody think that they might be in the middle? A little bit in the middle? Think about those kids in your classroom that are high in rhythmicity, and you go on a field trip, a great field trip, but you're late getting back from lunch. What behaviors do you see in those kids when their lunch isn't to them, when their body needs to have it? Anger. Hanger. You get a lot of that hanger when it's like that, because their bodies need to eat and sleep and do all those things at a predictable time, where other children might be low in rhythmicity, and that really doesn't bother them at all. They go to sleep at the same time or wake up at the same time. That's a high rhythmicity child. So we have to be cautious of thinking about those children and helping them out when things are going to change. So those are the 9 temperament traits that we talk to the children about. And those temperament traits help the children understand who they are, and they come to appreciate why they react to the world and to situations the way that they do. And once they understand their own temperament, they more easily can understand the temperament of others and come to appreciate that we're all different, and it's okay, just like this tiny baby that comes into the classroom. So when you came in, you all got a sheet of paper there, and what I'd like you to do is look at it and mark yourself down. Put a little X on each one of those continuums where you would put yourself. I'll give you a minute to do that. And then you can probably guess what you're going to do next. So just thinking about your own temperament, where would you put yourself on the continuum? Emotional intensity, yes. When you're high in rhythmicity, your body likes to have those regular routines. So you like to sleep at the same time, you like to eat at the same time, you like to wake up at the same time. With little babies, they can often tell their other biological functions are toileting at the same time. There we go. So you've thought about yourself, and remembering back that Stella Chess and Alexander Thomas really came up with this in order to help parents understand their children, why sometimes there's a goodness of fit and sometimes there's not a goodness of fit. So now that you've got that figured out, what I want you to do is think about someone else in your life. It can be your partner, it can be a child, one of your children, it could be a student in your classroom. And I'd like you to think about their temperament. And you put an X for yourself, put a circle for them on the same lines. And I'm just curious, how many people here pick somebody that they have a goodness of fit with? And how many people here pick somebody that you're a little bit more like this? Because it's all about relationships. We all want those relationships to work. So I'm hoping from learning a little bit about temperament today that that's going to help you with some of the relationships that you have in the classroom and maybe in your homes. So just a word of warning though, because I made this mistake. Now that you've learned a bit about temperament, don't go home and tell your significant other, hey, I figured you out. And this is what's wrong, because it didn't go well for me. Can I answer any questions, or do you have any comments? Yes.
I have a question. So, like, in temperament traits like adaptability, I know as a mother and an educator, I understand, like, being self-aware of your type of temperament, but definitely, I know you say this is good or bad, but I would want to encourage anyone to become more adaptable if they're not. So, I guess what I'm hearing you say is part of this training is having a self-awareness of your temperament and developing strategies to help you, if you're not very adaptable, to, when you're in a situation, understand that about yourself and, gain practices to help you
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah.
to that situation.
Yeah, so if you have students in your classroom and you know that they're low in adaptability, when you change from one activity to another, I'm sure you've got lots of them that, they're not done that yet. Oh, no, not yet. Or it really kind of sets them off and their behavior shows that maybe they need more warning. And once someone has that more warning, you're going to help coach them with that. 5 more minutes before we end, 4 more minutes, we've got 2 more minutes, and you start to give them that. They're going to learn about themselves that way and start to give them their own warnings. So just like my husband, now when we go out for dinner, he has plan B in his back pocket. He already knows where we're going to go if that place is closed for any reason at all. So he's starting to learn more about himself and being able to adjust to those differences. Because if you're low in adaptability and there's a change, particularly if the restaurant's closed, it's disappointment. That's the feeling that he's feeling. And then your children, their behavior all comes from their feelings. So a child who's very low in adaptability and there's change, you're going to see disappointment and probably some behaviors that are going to go along with that. But helping them prepare for that will be useful for them and helpful for you. Thank you. Any other questions? Yes.
Do you have a copy, or is a copy of this online?
No, there isn't one online, but there's probably some left over because I think I brought lots. So just outside the door, I think that there might be some more of those. Good. Any other? Yes.
We have a toddler just like the one that you featured.
Yes.
Any tips
Is that the mood one, the little guy that was serious? Well, I mean, that's who that little guy is, and he's probably going to go through his life like that. I think it helps a parent understand that they're not unhappy. It's just how they present themselves to the world. It's easier for us as parents or educators to get that feedback so we know how we're doing. And when you don't get it, it can become frustrating. You can feel as though nothing I do can make you feel happy. But I think understanding temperament and maybe talking to them more about how they are feeling. You know, are you enjoying yourself? Because you could have fooled me, but are you enjoying yourself? You know, and letting them express themselves verbally rather than through their facial expressions, because that's what that little guy looked like every time we saw him. Is that helpful at all? Yeah? Okay. Any other questions? No? Thank you very much for coming this afternoon. I really appreciate it. Thank you. Thanks.